Hey guys, James Laney here. Got a new video for you today. We're going to be going over a 9mm PCC carbine that I built for Steel Challenge. Before we get into that, if you like my videos, please hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please put that down in the comment sections, and I'll see if I can answer them. If you've got anything that you want to see content on, let me know, and I'll see if I can't possibly do a video on that. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. So, like I said, if you like my videos, please hit subscribe. So, let's talk about 9mm PCC carbines. So, before we get started on that, you kind of have two decisions to make. You can buy one pre-built, or you can build one. So obviously I chose to build one. This is one that I put together. And when I was looking at the different options out there, I looked at the MPXs, I looked at the JP5 stuff, I looked at the GMR stuff, and you're probably going to spend about $2,000 and up getting, if you just buy one that's pre-built. I looked at the LED stars because their stuff came highly recommended. I looked at a few of those before I got started. So what did I build and why did I build it? So when putting this together, I did a lot of research, tried to figure out what parts were going to play well together, because not all parts play well together. Some parts do play well together. Some parts have a history of playing well together. The gold standard, it seemed like, was the JP rifles. They seem to have a really good reputation. I've seen a few of them out there. They generally run really good. They're kind of pricey. They did have a few things on them that I would want to change. So I was like, you know what? If I spend the $2,000, I'm going to end up having to add another couple $100, kind of getting all the parts and things that I liked. You're probably going to change the trigger out, the handguard, maybe what you like, don't like, grips, things like that. So I just decided to put one together. So I used my two core components that I used an Aero Precision upper and lower, and I'll make a list, and I'll throw a list in the video somewhere of all the parts that I used. That way you kind of have an idea of what plays well together, what doesn't play well together. But I used an Aero Precision upper lower, and then I used a lot of Taccom parts, and we'll go over all the different parts and kind of some of the benefits and why I chose those parts. So another big decision that you got to make, and there's not really a right or wrong with this, is do you want to use, what kind of magazines you want to use. So this is a Glock mag system. You can also get CZ Scorpion magazine upper lowers. You can get in the Colt magazine upper and lowers. The Colt and the Glocks are probably the two most common. And I already had some Glock mags, so I was like, I'm just going to go with Glocks. You can generally get Glock mags pretty cheap, and they're widely available. You can walk into just about any sporting goods store and find Glock mags. So Colt mags are hit and miss. You can order them just fine. They're not very pricey. And they seem to be quality mags too. So with this, before I get started, after I built this, I took it out to shoot it. I reached in my pile, grabbed some mags. They looked like Glock mags, but they ended up being pro mags, and they were absolute trash. If you're looking for magazines, I would absolutely recommend you stay away from the pro mags. They look just like Glock mags. I thought I was grabbing Glock mags initially out of my pile, and they're a polymer design. They're steel lined. The only way to tell them apart is basically looking at the base plate, and because they'll be marked pro mag, and the lips bend really easy on them. They're just not hardened the same way as the Glock mag lips, and I just had constant problems. Once I figured that out and I started using the Glock mags, I've had absolutely no issues whatsoever and no malfunctions whatsoever. So let's talk about the upper and lower, because that's kind of the heart of your system. And I looked around and I really narrowed my choices down to 2 different manufacturers, either Aero Precision. This is the Aero Precision EPC9. This was specifically designed for 9mm. And I also looked at the Lead Star, because I looked at some of the Lead Star. Some of their stuff was really cool. They had a lot of skeletonized upper lower receivers, so the weight might be a little lower, but when I was comparing the specs, they didn't really look much lower. So I wanted a fairly lightweight build overall that was going to transition fast. The weight of this build comes in at, without the sight, it came in at 4 pounds 14 ounces. With the sight, it came in at 5 pounds 1 ounce. So as you see it sitting right here, it is 5 pounds 1 ounce. So it's pretty lightweight as far as ARs go. You could have went lighter, and we'll talk about some of the other key components that really affect weight quite a bit. But looking at this upper lower, I really like the upper lower. It's definitely quality. I did have one problem, and it was with the last round bolt hold open. So if you look on the back side of it here, you'll see a screw right there and right there. It's really hard trying to do this when you're looking at the video. But I did not check those screws to see if they were tight after I put everything together. And the very first time I took it out to shoot it, those screws fell out, the little plate fell off, and there's a little spring wire behind it. It's got a hook that goes into the receiver with a little hook that points down, and your follower will hit that on the last round, which pushes up on that, and as it pushes up on that, it will push the other little curved tail of this out on the bolt catch, which is what uses your last round hold open. I think this is a proprietary design that only Aero Precision has. It is stupid simple, and it's very effective. I've had absolutely no problems with the last round bolt hold opening working, even with these really light loads that I've been using. And so I contacted Aero Precision about getting some of these screws. It is a 6x32 screw, so you would think that, hey, you can just go to Lowe's and buy that. Well, they have a really unique head on them. So it is a machine type screw, and a lot of the heads on them kind of bevel up like that. Well, these have more of a really short bevel, so I didn't think if I went to Lowe's and got a replacement, I'd be able to make it work without putting it on the lathe and machining some of that bevel off of it. So I called Aero Precision, and no questions asked. They asked me how many I wanted, and I told them, hey, can you just send me 2 replacements and a backup in case one ever falls out? And they sent me those free of charge, no questions asked. And I ordered them on a Monday, and they had them to me by Wednesday. And I thought, well, that was pretty impressive coming from Washington to Arkansas. So it's quite a trip there. So their customer service, so far, it's been great. I've heard they were pretty good, and like I said, no questions asked. They didn't ask me why I was retarded and didn't tighten them up or anything like that, and they just shipped them to me. So that's really between that and the ejector. The 9mm have to have an ejector that's built into the lower, and that's what these 2 little bolts right here hold in, which all comes pre-installed. You don't really have to install anything unless you forget to tighten something down. Everything that's proprietary is pre-installed. It also came with the bolt latch, because the bolt latch is slightly different on the mag stuff for Glocks than it is for like your typical 5.56 magazine system. So it came with a really nice mag release. It's got a big buttons, real easy to hit. The mag's drop free. It's got a big mag well on it, so if you were looking at maybe using it for USPSA, IDPA, where you got to do some mag changes, this ought to work pretty good. The Glock mags fall free with no problems, all the Glock mags that I have. The trigger guard is fairly wide. So I've seen some that were narrow, and a lot of competition rules. I know USPSA still challenge have this rule, and where this could come into play is if you have a one of the hyperfire triggers, the trigger shoe that comes on some of them is wider than a lot of trigger guards that I've seen, but this trigger guard is very wide, so I don't think you're going to have any trouble using the trigger shoe on those if that's the route that you went. So very happy with this. Got a Picatinny rail. It does seem to be true Picatinny mil spec. It is labeled, which is kind of a nice feature, so I like that. Overall, the receiver seems to be really good quality. I used the lower parts, the Aero Precision lower parts kit. Came with a safety selector. I did not use the safety selector. I used a Battle Arms, which I really like. We'll talk about that here in a minute. The safety settings are at a 45-60 degree angle instead of a 90 degree. And the safety that I used is adjustable from 45-60 degree to 90 degree, so I think it's at 60 degree. It is reversible. If you did have a 90 degree receiver, you can use that. I've used these safeties on a lot of builds. They have a dovetail that sits on the pin so they don't just fall off, and it's got a little lock screw that you can lock tight on there, so you can't just, they're not going to come loose and then start dangling or anything like that. It's got a long lever, and then it's got a short lever on the other side. You can put them on either side as you see fit. I'm left-handed, so I'll put the longer lever on this side. A little easier to hit with my thumb. So if you've watched my other videos, you know, my 1022 build, I used a MFT Minimalist stock. On this build, I used the same thing because I really like these stocks. They swivel up really good because of just kind of the design. They're very lightweight. I chose a true mil spec carbine buffer tube. A lot of the buffer systems are kind of designed for the carbine buffers, but they do have A2 buffer systems out there for these blowback actions. You just need to kind of choose your parts wisely there. I went with a Taccom magnetic delayed buffer system, and I believe it only comes, I don't think he has an option for an A2 buffer tube. I think they're only for the carbine. So if you were to put that in a A2, you're going to have to put some additional spacers back there. This is a 70-75 tube. It's nothing special. Standard castle nut with a Bravo Company end plate. I do stake my castle nuts. For those of you that build, some people do stake them. I only stake mine in one of the three places. You know, most of these castle nuts will have have cutouts for three places. I only stake mine in one place in case I ever do have to take it loose to make an adjustment. That makes it where it's not next to impossible to remove that castle nut, but it's not going to come loose without some assistance probably. I used a Breek Warhammer charging handle, and I really like these. They're ambidextrous. They're about $50. They've come in multiple colors and finishes. I don't remember what, gunmetal gray or something like that was what I chose. American made, $50 shipped. I don't think you can find a better deal on an ambidextrous charging handle. I really like those. I've used those on a couple different builds. Triggers. Let's talk about triggers real quick. So I used a CMC PCC trigger. If I would suggest that when you're doing a PCC build, you actually get a PCC specific trigger. And there's a couple reasons for that. If you look out there, you're going to see a lot of problems where people have had their guns have gone full auto, or you know, they just fail to reset, things like that. So if you get a PCC specific trigger, a lot of times it will help alleviate that problem. And also they're generally going to withstand the blowback stuff a little bit better than some of the non-PCC triggers. and they're going to reset. They're made to reset a little bit more reliably. Blowback actions are pretty hard on triggers. They're significantly harder on triggers than their 5.56 counterparts. I also considered the Hyperfire triggers. They seem to be real popular. They had what looked like some really good pull weights. Looking at some comparisons, their reset and stuff and take up was not always the best, and that was kind of why I ended up going with the CMC, because their take up and reset is just extremely short. It is a very nice, very crisp trigger. Their customer service reputation is supposed to be really, really good. This is listed as a 3.5 pound trigger. Mine pulls 2 pounds, 2 3/4 pounds. Most of the time, from my experience, a lot of these triggers will break in a little bit and come down in weight just a little bit. So I'm hoping this one will end up at probably around 2.5 pounds. But very happy with this trigger. Very easy to drop in. I would say that my one complaint is right now it's got some tension on it. But I wish they use some kind of a set screw in the bottom of it to where to take up some of the movement. It comes with the anti-walk pins. These were solid pins. You do want solid pins in a PCC. If you didn't know that, you don't want ones with the cutouts or anything like that, because if you get the pins that have the little spring cutouts or wire cutouts, they'll end up breaking eventually. So if you get the solid pins, they'll last a lot longer. I used this is a Taccom ultra lightweight carbon fiber handguard. It comes with a barrel nut, very easy to adjust. They also have a blast shield if you have a compensator somewhere along the top, so you don't start hitting your thumb with gases or anything. This barrel is non-compensated, so I don't have any problems with it, and I kind of like the feel of it without it. Kind of gives you a little bit of a grip. It does have some M-lock cutouts where you can mount different things if you need to, and we'll talk a little bit about that later also. Another thing that I used is the barrel. I used a Taccom ultra lightweight shrouded barrel. So this is actually a 5 1/4 inch barrel with a shroud that is welded on, so it gives it a legal 16-inch length. My concerns with going with a shrouded barrel is that they're a lot lighter weight than a full-length barrel, because the steel in the barrel stops about here, and then the rest of it's just aluminum over the shroud. That's the shroud. So you don't have a whole lot of weight out front, and we'll talk about weight distribution here in a minute. But really glad that I went with this barrel. These barrels, Taccom barrels in general, offer a couple of key features that I really, really liked. And like I said, I'm not sponsored by Taccom. This is just purely my opinion. But they offer some features that I really liked, and I think most people could really appreciate. Accuracy on this barrel has been phenomenal. Sub 1 inch at 25 yards, plenty accurate. I've seen a lot of people complain about the accuracy out of some of these 9mm, especially when you start getting into some of these really, really light loads. Like this load right here is using a 100 grain hollow base 380 bullet. Power factor is about 95 on it, so it's a very light load. But these short bullets, you have to load at a shorter overall length, so they don't always necessarily feed really well. And one of the nice features about the Taccom barrels is, if you can see this little shiny thing right here, it's actually a key, and there's a cutout in the bolt. So this key sticks out, and as the bolt slides forward, it kind of slides onto that key. Well, the purpose of that key is, as you're feeding a round out of the magazine, a lot of times rounds want to get pushed up. That key keeps the round from going up, and when it hits that key, it will help guide it into the barrel. So that really helps on these short stubby rounds, and it's a nice feature. You can take the key in or out of the barrel. It just simply lifts out. You probably have to take the barrel off. I don't know if you could. It's not going to come out without taking the barrel out, but so you're kind of because the receiver is going to hold that key in there. But if you didn't want the key, you simply take it out. If you have a bolt that does not have the cutout for the key, don't hold me to this, but I believe he will let you, if you buy one of his barrels, you can send your bolt in and he will machine that cutout for free. So that's kind of a nice little feature, and that lets you use, if you've got another bolt, I used a Taccom bolt, and it came with the cutout already. But if you have a bolt already and you wanted to use one of his barrels with the key, you can send him that bolt and he'll cut that for you. He may start charging for that at some point or another, but as of right now, I think that's a pretty good deal. Also, if you can, let's see if I can add some light to that. The bottom of his barrel has a nice ramp, probably one of the bigger ramps that I've seen on any of these barrels. So that's going to help that round feed out of the magazine. There's a nice bevel on the end of the barrel. I don't know how well you can see that. So like I said, the rounds just want to slide into that barrel super nicely with no problems. So like I said, been real happy with this barrel. The price on them was really good. I think I picked that barrel up for like $150. So the price on them is very modest. There's cheaper barrels and there's certainly more expensive barrels. But getting an upper feed ramp or a feed key, I guess you would call that, and getting a true feed ramp, not just a bevel on the bottom, is pretty big. And like I said, the accuracy on this is more than I was, willing to accept. So can't beat that. I did speak to him about blanks. I can't remember what blank he was using, but it was a brand name blank that he's getting and using. So for my bolt, I used a Taccom extreme short stroke bolt, and I went with that bolt for a couple different reasons. For one, it was going to play well with the barrel, and it was designed for the buffer system that I ended up using. A couple other features that I liked about his bolt is that I don't think you can see it necessarily in here, but it's got the case head is supported really nicely on his bolts. So if you ever do have one that shoots slightly out of battery, it's going to support the case head. A lot of times when I've seen bolts that fired out of battery, the blowout in the case was a lot worse when they didn't have that little bottom lug to support the back of the case. So this one supports it very nicely, so no issues there. I think it comes with a titanium firing pin system and all that, which is going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit faster, but I don't know that that's necessarily a key to anything working well. And I also use the Taccom delayed magnetic recoil system. So it's a very interesting system. I'm playing with it. I did disassemble it and I broke a magnet, and Tim is going to ship me some new magnets out. I've not received those yet, but I should be getting those probably pretty soon. And it was my fault that I broke it. I did not follow his instructions, so that was purely on me. And like I said, he asked me what I did, but like I said, he offered to replace them at no charge. So Taccom's customer service seems to be pretty good. Pretty happy with that. And I sent him a message telling him what I did, and he asked me to give him a call and talk to me about it. And like I said, real smooth, real nice guy. He was real helpful. we talked about setting it up, kind of what I was doing, and he gave me some tips and stuff like that. Initially, so on this magnetic delayed system for the buffer, it has 4 magnets. It came with a brass buffer and an aluminum buffer, so if you want to reduce the weight of it, you can, and I'll talk about that just in a minute. As of right now, I'm playing with 2 different loads. I've got a 115 grain. I've tried one with a power factor of about 115, and I've also got 115 grain with a power factor of around 97. And then I'm loading these 100 grain at a power factor of around 95. And they're all very light loads. Initially, it came with, it has a flat wire spring. It has 2 additional tension rings, which were not installed. And then it had all 4 of the magnets installed. So initially I thought that these loads probably wouldn't cycle with all 4 of the magnets in place, because breaking the initial magnet force loose was pretty stiff. So I took it out, shot it with all 4 of the magnets in place, and all of the rounds functioned absolutely no problem, and even cycled it enough to where the last round bolt hold open functioned with no problems. So, but what made me think that I needed to adjust it some is that I really couldn't tell a difference in recoil from the 115 power factor to the 95 power factor. So my initial thought is that all I was feeling was that initial force to break those magnets loose. So I've reduced the magnets down to 2, and so far it's looking a lot better, and I can feel the difference now. And still cycling just fine. I did add 1 of the tension rings back in. I can't tell that the system's bottoming out. It has a second stage spring to kind of ease that bottoming out, but I can't really tell that I'm bottoming out or anything at all. It doesn't feel like I'm bottoming out. I may take that additional tension ring out and see what that looks like, but it's real easy to adjust, real easy to play with. He includes a chart that kind of gives you the pounds of force. So it was around, I think, 16 pounds of force with all 4 magnets, and when I took 2 of the magnets out, I think I dropped 4 pounds of force. So I think I'm somewhere around 11 or 12 pounds of force with just the 2 magnets. The advantage to running this magnetic system, and this is why I went with it, is that it lets you reduce the weight of your bolt, and it lets you run a lighter buffer system. So one of the things that people do to get a soft recoiling PCC rifle is they will run a really heavy buffer system. Like I said, I think when Colt initially designed these, I think they decided that 22 ounces was right around the optimal weight. I've seen people run as heavy as 26, 27 ounces between the bolt and the buffer. So when you run these really heavy ones, that's great. It is going to make it feel a lot softer because your reciprocating mass is going to reduce that felt recoil, but it is also a slow system. I wanted a very fast system to where if I ever do want to do USPSA or IDPA, running these faster systems, I think is going to reduce your split times. And my split times, even in Steel Challenger, are fairly short. So I don't want to be waiting on my buffer system or anything like that. I want to be able to pull the trigger and go. I'm running right now probably about 17 ounces between my bolt and my buffer system. To use his buffer system, you have to remove the weight in the bolt. So his weight in his bolt was just pinned in. You just knock the pin out, slide the weight out. And the reason for that is there's a rod in the buffer system, so that rod will slide into the hole in the back of the bolt. So it's a very fast system. The recoil impulse initially, I've got another 9mm PCC rifle, and it is just a standard heavy 22 ounce reciprocating system. And I will say that your initial thought is that this recoils harder, but it's not that it recoils harder, it's just recoiling faster. So you kind of have to differentiate the two. So like I said, this one initially feels harsher, but where you realize that the recoil is actually less is in your dot movement. And the dot movement is just next to nothing. You know, in watching me shoot this, and this rifle weighs quite a bit less than my other one, this rifle just doesn't move. When you're watching muzzle rise and things like that, there's none. I mean, it's not quite shooting a 22, but it's not really far off from shooting a 22. You know, in talking with Tim, he suggested that I even try the aluminum one, which is going to drop me another couple of ounces. Now, he only suggested that I try that with these 100 grain, really sub power factor loads, to see if I like the feel of that. Now, obviously, it's going to speed the system up more, and it's going to give you that feeling of maybe a harsher recoil impulse, but you're going to have less reciprocating mass. So it's going to speed the system up more, and like I said, your actual recoil should be a little less. So I don't know if I can reduce my dot movement any more than what I have, because like I said, it's already next to none. And just doing what people call the dollar bill test is basically where you kind of stick something up about the size of a dollar bill and just see how fast you can unload on that size of target and keep all of the bullets in that target before you start walking them out the top. And I will say that I can keep all of my shots in that. You know, I can do 5 shots and keep them all in a little cluster, about the size of a $50 at 25. So very happy with how this is handling, and like I said, I'm going to fine tune it just a little bit more, but really happy with it. So I think that covers all the parts. Let's talk a little bit more just about the barrel real quick. Is if that's going to affect how your rifle balances. So with my stock adjusted to this position, as of right now, this rifle is 34 inches long. So if you take that, half that's going to give me a halfway point of right about here on this rifle as my neutral balance point. So if you've watched my other videos, you know that if you move weight to the back behind this balance point, so right now this rifle balances right about the back of the mag opening. So I'm about I'm right about there. So I'm probably about 1.5 inches or so behind the neutral balance point. So as you shift weight behind that neutral balance point, that speeds the rifle up. As you shift weight to the front of that neutral balance point, that slows the rifle down. So why does that make a difference? That makes a difference in, especially like Still Challenge, where you're constantly transitioning from targets. So if you find that you're overshooting your targets and you're missing, if I'm transitioning left to right, and as I'm swinging around, let's say this is my target right here. If I'm hitting the target on the left side, that means I can speed my rifle up a little bit and I can shift weight to the back to help bring my shots in center. So basically all I'm doing is timing this rifle to how my brain pulls that trigger and things. So if you are shooting on the right side, if you're transitioning over here and your shots are on the right side of that target, or you're missing on the right side of that target, then you need to slow the rifle down some. And to do that, you're going to shift weight out. And there's all kinds of different ways to shift weight out. When I initially set rifles up and I'm just testing how much weight I want out to shift my balance point, I like to use lead tape or stick on wheel weights. you know, sometimes you can stick them on the inside, sometimes you can stick them on the outside, and then kind of once you figure out how much weight you use to slow that transition down, you can use, you know, something with any of the, you know, you can use like a forward hand stop, you can just stick the lead weights on the inside of your handguard, or, you know, there's any number of things that you can attach to here to move weight forward. Sometimes you can adjust your sight to adjust weight. There's lots of ways to do that. So, you know, a lot of these blowback PCCs tend to be stock heavy, just because, you know, if I was using a heavier buffer system or heavier bolt, that's obviously going to move weight back. You know, sliding your stock in and out can adjust it a little bit. So there's a lot of things that can shift weight on these. You know, if you use a 22-ounce buffer system, that's going to put weight out here. You know, the further back you move that weight, that's going to affect balance more greatly. So, you know, in choosing the barrel, you know, a shrouded barrel, like I said, I was a little nervous at first that this was going to make my front end too light. And then, you know, I debated on using a heavier handguard or something like that. But I figured, you know, hey, it's fairly easy to add weight out here, so I'm just going to do that. You know, you can even add the little blast shield if you need to. Like I said, that's only maybe an ounce or two. So, but, you know, like I said, adding that out here, that's going to shift that balance point forward just a little bit. And it makes a big difference. You know, if you know, I used to shoot a lot of shotguns, and adding, you know, getting your shotgun to swing correctly for you is a big thing in shooting trap and sporting clays and things like that. You know, a lot of shotguns come with a removable weight system for adjusting that specifically. So, like I said, you know, I was very happy with how this, you know, I came in at basically 5 pound rifle, and initially I'm pretty happy with my balance point because I like a neutral to slightly back end heavy rifle, because I tend to be a little slower on my trigger pull for my transitioning. So having that faster front end helps me get on my targets a little bit better. So hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I think that really covers everything that I did with this and why I chose my parts. So far, these parts are playing really well together, and as of right now, I don't think I would change anything. So if you like my videos, please subscribe. If you've got any questions or anything on this build, just put a question down in the comments. You know, if you've got something that's not working for you or whatever, you know, throw that out there just so people can see. Because, you know, these are a system. You know, getting everything that plays well together is important. You know, that's why I tried to go with a lot of Taccom parts, because I knew those were going to play well together. You know, one of the things I didn't know was if the bolt and everything was going to play well with this upper and lower receiver. But so far it's exceeded my expectations in how it plays well. The last round bolt hold open, and just the fit and function of everything is just really good. So really happy with it, and like I said, the weight came in exactly where I was wanting it. So like I said, very happy with this. If you got any questions, drop it down in the chat. And if you run into me out at a match or something, hey, come up and talk to me. If there's anything that you would like to see in the future, let me know. I'll see if I can't maybe do a video on that. And then please hit subscribe if you like my videos. So thanks for watching, guys.